Hello, thanks for tuning in for another video. Today I'm going to be talking about Ethan Mollick's Co-Intelligence, Living and Working with AI. While I do read mostly science fiction and fantasy novels, I do check out nonfiction fiction, so those are going to be interspersed here and there throughout the channel. And having a discussion with a friend about artificial intelligence and everything that's going on with AI, and talking to my wife, who is also a professor of business. This book has been on my radar. I do follow Ethan Mollick on LinkedIn and read his work along with a host of others. And it just seemed like the right time this week to jump into this and see what the hype was about. My Libby hold was still about 18 weeks away, so I knew how popular that was. So I used an Audible credit and got this and finished in 3 days. It's a very quick read. And for someone who's familiar in the scene of generative AI and analytics, it's nothing new, but at the same time, it's written for that general audience, and it's great reminders of, even if you are familiar with how machine learning works and artificial intelligence was built, it's a good reminder of how it all works together, what the latest developments are in this front, and maybe most importantly, how the average user who may not be your techno geek who is on the cutting edge of Gen AI relates to this and how they work with it and how they're going to work with it. And that's my biggest takeaway, and why I would still give this 5 stars with the target audience in mind. This may not be the book for a PhD in data science and machine learning and statistics. They're going to know this. They're going to be on the forefront of this technology. But if you are a middle manager in corporate America, this may be the book you need to get you up to speed. You've used a little ChatGPT here and there. You're not the expert. You kind of understand it. This book will, by the end of this book, you will understand it and how to implement it. So that's what I think the strengths of this book are. That target audience would absolutely get a 5 out of 5. Mollick being a professor of business himself, who is, again, that personal relationship, having just finished my own studies for my master's in business analytics from NYU Stern, and my wife being a business professor herself. He does talk a lot about working with AI in education. So that is a topic that's hot in my mind. Or if anyone who has kids themselves, you probably are realizing the benefits of having a large language model as a tutor, like Khanmigo with Khan Academy, or just using ChatGPT to help you understand your child's homework. So for people in that frame of reference, this is going to be a great book for them. And like I said, it's very quick, so you'll go through this pretty fast. The book is structured into 2 sections. So it's only 2 sections. The first section kind of gets you up to speed about what LLMs are at this point, kind of the evolution in the history, just a quick overview. And the section 1 ends with Mollick's 4 rules for generative AI. And those, I think, are very key. If you've never heard these before, I'm going to just look at my notes real quick just to make sure I'm saying them correctly. The first one is always invite AI to the table. I thought this was a great way, and I'm going to reference this a few times, a great way to integrate AI into your life and to learn how you can integrate AI into your life. So you can see how Mollick is a educator himself, and in this structured approach, his first rule is to use the tools, and he makes that reference throughout the book. You're not going to know the capabilities or the limitations of AI unless you use the tools yourself. And it's not the 10,000 hours to become an expert. I've read that book. It's just getting familiar with the tools and understanding at a level where you are a user yourself, where you are the power user, that how can you make decisions about whether or not to do something or how to judge something if you've never used the tool yourself. So you really need to integrate it into your daily workflow. And by doing so, you'll see where it does work in that workflow or where it doesn't. And that's the second rule, which is be the human in the loop. So this relates to the first rule of always using AI, and by understanding its limitations through constant use of the AI, you'll know where the AI falls short and where you need to be the human to make those informed decisions, to judge its output. So back to the first part, and if you're watching this, you hopefully know a little bit about AIs and how large language models are trained. But because it's just a prediction model at its core, by predicting the next word in the sentence, that's where the hallucinations come from. Because it's predicting the next most likely word to form a response. It doesn't actually know what the response should be. It's just basing its knowledge on whatever the training data was. And it's very interesting how Mollick talks about the trained data and the limitations. So for those who don't know, things like training the data on so many fan fiction romance novels in the early days of LLMs, because those were freely available for the researchers to build their models. So what the model is trained on has a large effect on how it makes those connections and the predictions. So by being the human in the loop, you need to be the one that evaluates the output and doesn't just accept it at first glance. And this is, I see myself all the time, and I hear from my wife with her students, one of the common mistakes that new users make is they'll put the homework assignment straight into ChatGPT, see the answer, and paste that answer into the discussion prompt. And for anyone who's used ChatGPT, or for even LinkedIn, I see this all the time, you'll see an output. And if you've used it yourself, you can clearly know how the quirks of structured answers from ChatGPT look. And you can see that it's exactly, without any editing human hand, what the user slash student slash poster is using the LM for. So you really need to be that human in the loop to understand what the output is, evaluate whether it's helpful or hurtful, and whether the answer is even correct. Recording this after OpenAI's release of the new Strawberry model. One of the funky quirks of ChatGPT is that it couldn't count the number of R's in strawberry. But the new model is, it can finally knows that there's 3 R's in strawberries, which is one of the quirks of LLMs in general, that it can produce code. I seconds ago asked it to create code to access an API, format everything, and give an output in Python. And it did that in 30 seconds. But that same large language model can't count the number of R's in strawberry. I was using GPT-4 to create an image for a video, and I told it, I want to rate this video 5 stars, so only have 5 of this object appear in the image. And using ChatGPT-4 with the DALL-E image generator, it would produce 6 of something. It can't count. And you'd think, how can something that can write perfect code not count to 5 or count to 4? How does it not know that there's 3 R's in strawberry? But again, as Mollick explains in his book, and if you know yourself, it's because LLMs work on vectors, and it's the spatial relationship between words and concepts that drive large language models and that allow it to work in some areas but not others. And that's another key point maybe I should mention now, is the idea of the jagged frontier. And this is a really cool topic, and there's a whole academic research paper on the jagged frontier. And if you think of a jagged line, it's where AI is really good in some things like data analysis or actually creativity and idea generation, but it's really bad in others. So it is a frontier, it is a jagged line. And back to point 1, using AI, always inviting AI to the table, you can understand yourself for how that applies to your specific situation. If you're an educator yourself, where's it good? Is he good at summarizing things? Yes. Is he good at providing actual constructive feedback? Maybe not, because it doesn't know the students. It doesn't know that nuanced way to respond to someone, unless it's again, based on its trained data, unless it's working on a similar trained data object. So that's the next one, is part 3, treat AI as a human. So this is another thing that people that are in the AI world of prompt engineering and know this topic is, there's a way to prompt and to talk to AI more like a human. And even myself, someone with a computer science background and this, business analytical mindset, at first I wanted to talk to AI in that structured format and give it just the commands in kind of how you talk to Google. There's a syntax you learn to talk into search engines, to talk to AI, because you understand a little bit how it's working, how it's reading things, and you have that kind of logical step-by-step computer programming mindset. So you give it that knowledge. But as Mollick mentioned in his book, LLMs, generative AI, was trained on human speech, human text. So by talking back to it, by anthropomorphizing it, the AI as a human, you actually do get better responses. So the best way to treat AI is more like an intern, where you spell out exactly if you were talking to an intern, you would give more backstory. You would tell it, okay, here's the steps you should take with the example of a desired outcome, and then see what the intern gives back to you. If you treat AI in that same way, with more of a framework, with a little more coaching of what you want to achieve, you will get instantly better results, because you're providing more context. And that's the idea of personas, which Mollick talks about as a great way to handle a range of tasks by having the AI act as this, having the AI act as that, to give it that extra context of how you want the AI to perform. And the fourth one is, again, kind of all ties back in the first one of inviting AI to the conversation. The fourth rule of co-intelligence is to assume AI is the worst it's ever been right now. So what that means, and as of recording this, with having O1 Preview Strawberry just come out, the AI we're using now, or the AI that was used when the book was written, it's already outdated. So we need to keep inviting the AI to the conversation with the human in the loop, to keep pushing those frontiers, to keep pushing the jagged frontier, to see where we need to go next and how we need to adjust our own prompting and our own workings with AI in this ever-evolving field. So tying that together as the book moves into part two is all about different scenarios of where and how to best use AI, whether as a coworker, whether as a tutor. And I would say those two are the kind of the biggest hits for me, was AI as a coworker and AI as a tutor. And AI as a coworker, with this being a business book and me talking about this in a business mindset, is I think where the most value of AI is from. And it ties back to what I just mentioned, the idea of treating AI as a person, but also as an intern. And Mollick gives great examples of how you can use AI as part of a team. He gives examples of how he uses AI in the classroom for not case competition, but entrepreneurship, where you can basically build out a team and have AI on the team, and it provides exponential better results. And this is, I think, the best way to how I personally use AI as myself, is AI is now my own personal intern. It's my own assistant. So when I have a task, again, just how I would approach a friend, an intern, I can bounce ideas off the AI. I can ask it, what do you think about this? Treating it as that silent coworker in the room at all times, who, as AI, is always ready to please you with a well thought out answer. On that notion of having AI as a coworker, one of the most interesting cases that Mollick gave was using it in a creative way. And this, I think, is the real connection I made with the book, and one of the key points that I took away. And myself, I have a background, before I did computer science, I was a photographer. And one of the ways you learn photography, and this is true of a lot of creative fields, is you emulate others. You find the examples of the people you look up to in arts or creativity, and you emulate them. You try and see how they made that photo. How did they pose? And you kind of work back and disassemble what makes this photo great and that photo not so great. And then you take that and apply that to, in my case, the next wedding. I know this made a great photo. I kind of understood why. It was the way they posed. It was the lighting. It was the angles. It was the depth of field. How all these elements came together to create what I personally thought was a great photo. So now that I'm in that scenario, how can I recombine these elements and adapt it to the current situation I'm in at this current wedding? And you can think of this example whether with art, where you emulate your favorite artist, and eventually you develop your own style, right? Because you take the bits and pieces of what you like from different artists or different inspirations, and you remix them together. And this is an old concept of how everything is a remix. And as I was reading this is one of the first times that I took a note on an audiobook. I opened up the note option in Audible and I wrote everything is a remix, because that's exactly what, when you put it that way, that's exactly what AIs are doing. So the way AIs, or large language models, AIs, I'm using interchangeably, the way that they're forming relationships is through the vectorization of their corpus of knowledge, how the space between the different concepts and how they interconnect. And Mollick talks about using that to your advantage as far as idea generation and using it to be creative. His examples were in the classroom where he would ask AI to give him, 10 ideas for a marketing campaign. Give me 15 ideas by this. But in that same way where we're remixing bits and pieces of the way different photographers shoot and adapting to this by prompting AI with that same concepts of, because AI will give you, again, the most commonly, it'll give you the next common word that's predicting. So the words that are closer together in the vectorization. But by stretching beyond that vectorization, that's where you pull those ideas out of left field. Oh, it's Netflix for books. It's Netflix for video games. It's Netflix for power tools. It's taking that concept and remixing it with another idea, and that mashup could create a new business. In this case, it was an idea for the entrepreneur competition. But just that concept of forcing the AI, which is, again, using the jagged frontier concept, things it's really good at, which is creating lists of things and making connections, but then taking it one step further and having it go beyond its normal corpus, stretching to the outer edges of the vector to remix something and create something new. Again, with the human in the loop, that can help you spur on to your next idea, your next creative thought. The other example he gives is writing, where he'll ask the AI to assume a persona of this person who has never read a book, and what does he think of that chapter? Thinking outside the box and adding that human touch to, again, see where AI is good at and pull it back together and to create something new that will be super useful. So that's a really good idea. I love that everything is remixed, and how understanding how AI works by putting the hours in and putting that and always inviting AI to the table will allow you as the user to find those use cases like this, for example, of idea generation, how that AI can work best for your specific use case. The other quick concept I want to talk about as I kind of wrap up this review, and just my personal highlights, what I took away, was the idea of centaur versus cyborg. So this is the concept of working with AI in the future and how we are going to view AI. And I thought it was a really good way to explain things to people who are trying to understand AI themselves, which is the idea of a centaur, which is a human and an animal mashed together at the waist. So it's two distinct halves, and there's a clear delineation of these are the tasks for AI and these are the tasks for humans. And that's one way of working with AI. I'm only going to give AI this task. I'm only going to do AI this, and I'm going to keep these tasks for myself. The other one, which you probably understand through this, talking about it and through reading the book, that Mollick's preferred method is the cyborg, which is that perfect union of man and machine, where you have the cybernetic implant and your brain is controlling the robot body. So it's that seamless blending of AI with every task. So it's not just enough to, I'm only going to have AI do this and I'm going to do that, but working together in that union with AI. So I think one of the examples is coding. I used to do software development and still do some just, of course, script writing and data analysis. And there's one, you think a software developer's job is to write code. But if you do it in a more union way, you don't want to take all of it away from the human, but you also don't want to do everything yourself either. So it's that union of, okay, I have the deep knowledge of how software should be written, so I'm going to let AI write a function that I'm going to use easily, or it's going to help me refactor something while I focus on some of the other aspects, and we work together in that synergistic way to accomplish the goals by having the human in the loop, understanding the greater context, having that domain knowledge, but then using AI throughout the process of helping you get unstuck on a coding problem or with some repetitive tasks, things that AI is good for. Those things like, repeatable tasks, pattern recognition, and then using my own human judgment to, still have control over the whole process. And just to summarize again, I think that's where AI is going, and I'm maybe more convinced after having finished this book that AI is going to be more of a cyborg. It's going to be more linked into our day-to-day. It's going to just continue to seamlessly integrate into our everyday life. There's not going to be that clear delineation, kind of the cat's out of the bag. You can't put it back in, that these tasks are only going to be for humans. These tasks are only going to be AI. It's going to continue to work with us side by side in that union. And we as leaders in the Gen AI data analytics space need to figure out, the best way forward of how can we, optimize the output while still doing the training to let people know that there still needs to be the human in the room, that you need to always double check, fact check, and AI can definitely take some of the tedious tasks of this. And there probably will be jobs that may be at least reducing capacity because so much of it can be done there. But you're always going to need someone to double check the output, to apply that critical thinking, and to give the guidance to AI at this point in time. Because like point 4, this is the worst we've ever had at this moment, and it's only going to keep getting better. So we really need to keep, pushing those jagged frontiers and experimenting to see where we can keep pushing the boundaries and where we need to see where control needs to be reined back in, and added that human oversight, human governance for fairness, biases, all these things on the training data. Just in one last maybe point, wrapping this up, I was watching a couple interviews with Mollick, just kind of prepare my thoughts for this video. And one interesting anecdote, and I think I'd read it, but hearing him talk about it, was Bloomberg building their own Bloomberg GPT, where they trained a specialty model on all of Bloomberg's data. But regular ChatGPT 4 still beat their customized billion dollar trained model, that regular out of the box GPT 4 still beat it on stock predictions. So it's one of those things where the future of LMs are those frontier models, like he calls it, which are the big box models like Claude, ChatGPT, Google, Gemini, Meta, the big players, because they have such a big advantage on the amount of data that these LLMs are trained on, that the smaller guys and the specialized models just really can't compete. There'll always probably be a space for them, just due to the privacy things, but by having that large corpus of knowledge already trained on, and that's the limiting factor, and these models really just blow everything else out of the water. So it's really an interesting space. I mean, I've played with the small models. I've done the local llamas, all the other stuff on Hugging Face. There's so much cool stuff to explore, but it is seeing this from Mollick's point of view of the frontier. The future is these frontier models, and it really just puts everything in perspective, and it wraps up a lot of the current knowledge on this into a short couple-hour book with the latest research as of this writing, as of the book publishing in 2024 on the state of LLMs. And he does it in a way that kind of makes it not time specific. Of course, there's references to GPT-4. But again, reading this and finishing this on the eve of the next model of O1 preview being released, it's already out of date. So he writes the book in a way that is generic enough that this is how we will be interacting with AIs in the future, not necessarily this is the state of AIs at this moment. So it is a book that I think will stand the test of time. Maybe not the test of time because this is such a rapidly changing space, but it will stand probably the next couple of years of a solid reference point for how to use AI in work and life every day. So still highly recommend it if you're interested in LLMs and generative AI and the future of work. Pick up this book, breeze through in a weekend. I know I did. You will not regret wasting your Audible credit on this or waiting for the loan from your library. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.